Hello everybody, so this is Gem Time, Patreon exclusive video here. I'm calling it Gem Alert because I want to thank the Patreon member who suggested it, and I am loving this one. So let's talk about catheters, probably something you didn't want to talk about today, but that's what I'm going to talk about. So catheter, central venous catheter. What are catheter? Catheter are needed for feeding the patients, oftentimes at hospitals. I'll end the video with that. But in the case of this specific company, the catheter is needed for dialysis, and you have one way in and one way out. You have two tubes coming out of the torso, and people who have kidney failure, they have to get hemodialysis, and hemodialysis is a way for you to treat kidney failure. And by the way, that's not something you want to have. Unfortunately, the treatment lasts only about 220 days. So some people recover, but if you don't, you may have to go through dialysis for life. And if it's too painful, you may just have to quit and go through end-of-life care. So that's really not something you want to have. Unfortunately, 800,000 people have that. And let's continue. So one of the 800,000 people have kidney dialysis, and that's a dangerous condition to have. But what's even worse is that you may die not from your kidney. You may die from what they call CRBSI, which are catheter-related bloodstream infections. And so these infections, that would be an example of a very unfortunate cause of death, where you're not dying from your disease, you're dying because you got your blood infected via those dialysis tubes. And you can see that the mortality in patients with kidney failure is already pretty high. But if you include the additional risk of getting an infection from these tubes being exposed, and air being exposed in these tubes, if you increase that risk, your odds of dying are even higher. And not only it's an ethical issue, because between 15 and 25% of patients who get an infection from the catheter die. So that's definitely an ethical issue, something I want to put my money towards. But also it's a financial issue, and we know the CMS, the Center for Medicare Services, they when they see an opportunity to save money, they love it and they cover it. And so this is a cheap fix, an inexpensive fix. These vials, it's called a catheter lock. This is potentially an inexpensive fix in order to save, $3.4 billion a year alone in hospitalization related to these bloodstream infections. Average $63,000 whenever you have to hospitalize someone with these infections. And so this is where we talk about the product. The product is called Defend Cath, and it's a catheter solution lock. So what happens is that once you go in for your dialysis at the dialysis center, and once they're done, they put a vial inside the tubes, each one vial, one tube. They have two tubes, so two vials per tube. And if it's the case of feeding the patient, which is not approved for that yet, that will likely be only one vial. But you put the vial, and then you lock the catheter, and it protects against a whole bunch of infection, because you have this fluid who's just sitting there and is blocking the air from creating an infection. And so in their studies, they show that the group that receives the solution lock inside the catheter, has minus 71% chances of getting an infection versus the control group, which doesn't get the lock. And so there's not much you can do about infections that happen when the nurse is working on you and when they're having you and setting you up. There can't be even Defend Cath at this point, so not much you can do there. But at least in your daily life, once you're not going at dialysis, you can do a lot. And so these are very encouraging numbers. And from what I understand, from the best I understand, is the FDA absolutely loves this, because they fast-tracked their approval. There's also an incentive at the dialysis center level, like a plus 2% incentive based on how few infections they get. Healthcare providers have an incentive to use a product like that because it reduces infection. And they've come up with a financing plan with the CMS of the Center for Medicare for the next 5 years, and it's $249 a vial a piece. And of course, it may seem expensive for a vial, but it's really not that expensive compared to the cost of an hospitalization. And again, can you put a price on a life? If that saves a life, you have someone doesn't die from an infection. Well, the CMS likely puts a price on a life. But as far as an investor goes, I think $249 a vial is in the grand scheme of things not expensive. And on this channel I've covered stocks that sell products that cost $30,000 a month. So this is maybe if you get once a week dialysis, that's going to be $500 a week. You're talking about a much cheaper product. And of course, over time, the price of this product will be reduced. And so now they're selling the product, but I want to call your attention to this, which is the addressable market as seen through their eyes, not including the feeding, the perinatal, I can't pronounce that, but not including when you feed a patient through the veins, not including that. So that's 40.8 million vials potential sold at $249 a piece. Think about that. Think about how insane that is. And they will also have potentially almost 5 million of potential infusions for what they call so that's what I was talking about. That's what they call the parenteral nutrition, which is when they feed the patient nutrients directly into the bloodstream. Same, you need a catheter when you do that, and the catheter needs to be protected. And there's a lot of people who go through this system, and who knows how much they could expand this product. There's catheters in use in all sorts of healthcare setting. So again, let me do the math. Let's do a quick math. So it's the only FDA-approved solution lock. So there is no competition per se. I saw a few things similar, but it's not for the dialysis type stuff. It's not indicated for really hemodialysis. So I'm just gonna say, for the sake of simplicity, there's no competition. Well, that's not entirely true. There's actually competition, and the competition is nothing. The competition is using nothing, and nothing is cheap. And these vials are $249. So it's kind of like Visa doesn't compete against MasterCard. Visa competes against cash, right? Because cash is free. So it's kind of the same thing. You're still competing against the free option, which is nothing. But let's do the calculation. 40.8 million vials at $249.99 each. That's $10.2 billion per year. So the total addressable market, the sales per year, are potentially $10.2 billion. And what's the market cap? This is my funny face here. The market cap is $655 million. So this is a pretty dirt cheap stock. They also just announced in early January, they just released preliminary numbers where they are telegraphing fixed costs for a full year of 2025. We don't have their guidance for a full year of 2025, but they also give me a very important number, which is the adjusted EBITDA number for Q4, which was 12 million. So thanks to that, I can calculate the adjusted EBITDA for that they are at right now. Profitability, it's 28%. It's 28% profitable. So the proxy for cash flow is very high. And so let me conclude with some baseline math and baseline predictions, no financial advice of where this could be headed. But the first point I want to make is that if someone is interested in this stock, which I am, we've avoided a whole 4 years of sitting around and not much to see, right? Not much to see. And the people who owned it like in early 24, well, that spike in the stock price, that plus 100%, 150% of the stock price, well deserved, especially if you've been sitting for 3 years. But it's different now because some people were buying, if you bought it in January 2020, you were buying into a pre-revenue company. Now It's not a pre-revenue company anymore. It's a company that has an FDA-approved device that was approved. Approval was not device. It's a lock. It's a solution, but that solution was approved in Q4 of 2023, and then it took them a while to manufacture and get the sales going, and they really started ramping in Q2 2024. So 6 months ago. Then Q3, then Q4. You can see between Q2 and Q3 the sales did a 10x. Then they did an easy 3x again. And so the big question is, how big are they going to be? Well, analysts, there's 4 analysts on the stock. I actually looked at the conference calls. The analysts seem to be pretty excited about this one if you read the conference calls. The analysts estimate revenue for full year 2025 to be 132 million from 55.4 million in 2024. So that would be an increase of plus 139%. That's rarefied air now. And if I put that in my model, how much am I paying for that growth? I'm paying an enterprise value over gross profit over revenue growth of a 0.1, which is about as cheap as IMSS. It's roughly as cheap as IMSS. The EBITDA margin is already better than IMSS. The growth, of course, is way better than just about any stock that I have in the channel at 139%. And this growth number is calculated by me. And based on my readings and based on everything I see online, people seem to be thinking that they may do 300 to 400 million in 2025. So the analysts may have to upgrade these numbers quite a bit, but I'm happy with these low numbers for analysts. So I like the stock very much. I'm probably going to initiate a position in the stock. I'm thinking I will probably buy call options. I noticed they have call options for the summer. So that's probably how I want to get exposure to that stock. But I find it quite interesting, and I think it could be a potential multi-bagger. So this was not financial advice, not investment advice. This is just entertainment, only entertainment, hoping you were entertained. Not health, not catheter advice either. Please like. Please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X, and of course, if you see this video, you likely follow me on Patreon. So thank you for your support. Have a wonderful day.